Hey, happy Tuesday to all the Discovery families out there. I want to take a few minutes to discuss some information that we reviewed from our My Thought Exchange survey that many of you took the time to do a week or two ago. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about the good, some about some concerns and some fears that everyone has. And I've got my notes in front of me, so I'll probably have to check with them a few times. Um, First of all, I just want to thank so many of you that have been so positive throughout this whole situation. I know it's been a trying time for everyone. Some people are going through things that are just great and a big struggle. We just hope that everyone's safe and well right now. And as much as I miss the kids and I miss interacting with the families, uh, you know, number one thing is your safety. So. Um, Although, like I said, the vast majority of the comments we get are very positive, I do want to address some of the concerns you've had because we want to make sure that we're doing our best at all times. And so I'll start off with um, kind of the way this all happened for us. Obviously, nobody knew it was going to happen. We're on spring break, and all of a sudden things are thrown at us where we didn't know, and then all of a sudden we're not coming back to school. So going into that, our classes are rarely all on the same page. We're not a school or a district that requires every teacher to be on page 217 on March 2nd, for instance. So due to classrooms doing projects, kind of the pace of learning, sometimes what we have to reteach, or if a teacher's gone, we weren't all on the same page. So that did mean that when we came back, it was going to take some adjustment. But when we did come back, as far as teaching and addressing kids, we did start slowly, intentionally. We didn't want to inundate parents with too much. We obviously didn't want to start putting a lot on the kids immediately as they were trying to adjust to all these new things. We also need to give the staff time to prepare well, because the last thing we want to do is start something and have to switch gears, and then start something new and switch gears. And another concern some people had was we hear that we're using too many different platforms. Well, when I addressed this with the staff, we decided we were all going to use Google Classroom as our platform. But with that being said, there are some apps and some programs that we've been using, or that we need to start using, that we're supposed to go through Google Classroom, but it could also be overwhelming. I did ask the teachers that not to start any new programs unless it was just that there was no way to address the essential skills without starting something there. Um, Again, we try to utilize things that were in Clever, already built in on that, kind of a one-stop shop, and so the kids would be familiar with what we were doing. Um, Dates of assignments. We've had some people say, man, I wish you could just assign everything on the same day. Well, I've also had probably just as many people say, can you space it out? My kids get overwhelmed. Or some parents are just completely honest and say, I think it's all due. And so I tell my kids, get this done, get this done. And it's added stress on the family. And that's the last thing we want to do. Um, that takes us to the workload. Um, it's probably a 50-50 split between my kids don't have enough to do and my kids have way too much to do. Again, we weren't trying to replicate the norm of our classrooms. There was no way to duplicate an everyday assignment load or the way of learning, but we wanted to do the best to give our kids the opportunity for those essential skills that they're going to need. Of course, there's some variables as far as what are the students' abilities. So teachers are trying to balance out the different abilities within their class. And then we also had to take in consideration, not all our families are in the same place to help. Some families maybe have educators that are at home, that they have um, a vast background in teaching, where some families still had both parents working, possibly in the medical field. We had several of those. And so not only were they mentally and physically fatigued, coming home and trying to help the kids was another challenge for them and put onto their family. And then we have some families that they weren't very familiar with technology, and there was this other stress. So we tried to find the best common ground we could, and I believe our teachers did a good job. Actually, I think they did a great job. but it could definitely not be a one size fits all type thing. Email will probably be the last thing that I've heard the most concerns about. And one thing we found was that sometimes parents were getting a lot of emails if they were invited into the Google Classroom with their child. And that was because there's a setting that you can, every time that there's a post, get an email from that teacher. And so we're going to work to see if we can get those turned off. Uh, we've tried very hard to group all of our emails together at Discovery and try to not send them out as individually as we might in the past. Uh, of course, there are sometimes those have to happen, but it's been our norm to, again, try to combine emails, maybe from a team, maybe from a grade level, or as we do when Miss Beth Schaefer sends something out every week, we try to put a lot of information on one page, so you just have to click it to open it, and then it'll take you to a lot of different places. Fears. There have been some fears with families, and the number one is by far that they're afraid their child will fall behind. I appreciate that that's the biggest fear that we have, because it shows the high standard that families have for their children and for the school, what we provide. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be a lot of review needed next year. However, again, we're trying to provide those essential skills. So maybe they're not getting quite the depth of everything, but they're going to have those essential skills. They're going to be acquainted with what we're doing. And so we'll be able to catch them up and bring them back to the level that you expect from Goddard Public Schools. Finally, I'd like to talk about some things that are positive. And again, there have been tons of positive comments, but there have also been some very specific things. The first I already mentioned, and that's Clever. A lot of parents weren't familiar with it, but it takes one password. You get in, you've got all these apps available that your child is used to using. It's kind of a custom fit thing for each school. Another thing we've heard a lot of great things about, that's the adaptable schedule for their kids. I think that it's nice. Some kids can do a lot in one day and take part of a day off and kind of re-energize and then get back out at their own schedule. And I think that it's an important part of learning. It's one that we don't usually have the opportunity to provide at the 5th and 6th grade level that much. It kind of reminds me of college. I try to get all my classes early in the morning. If I could avoid Fridays, that was always a positive. But we made our schedule depending on what we like to do. I like to get up, get it out of the way, and have time to work on my stuff. So I think kids are really starting to learn how they learn best. And then finally, and I think this is so important, I've had many parents talk about how they feel like they're more of a part of their child's education and they love it. They don't feel like this is a burden put on them, although it probably is for everyone. But they feel like it's just that they know more about what their kid goes through. They know more about the technology they're using, and they know more about how their kids feel about it. So a lot of good things have come out of it. Please never hesitate to call me if you have a concern about it. I may not know the answer right away, but I can definitely find you that answer. And just want you all to be safe, and I can't wait to have your kids back here. It's a pretty empty building, and it feels empty inside not getting to see all the kids that we love seeing every day. So be well, be safe. Goodbye.